My name is Teresa Duncan. I'm the director of the Regional Educational Laboratory, the REL, for the Mid-Atlantic region. I'd like to welcome you to our three-part video series supporting Baltimore City Schools in implementing a continuous improvement process. These videos are part of the learning series on early warning systems and represent just one of many projects undertaken by the REL program nationwide to provide technical assistance around developing and implementing early warning systems. The Baltimore City School District has a robust data collection and management system that includes early warning data around the ABCs of early warning systems: attendance, behavior, and course performance. But data use varies across schools and depends on the knowledge and functioning of school-level instructional leadership teams. This project involved working with 3 Baltimore City high schools: Mergenthaler Vocational, or MERVO, Patterson, and Western. REL Mid-Atlantic staff served as data coaches to these 3 high schools. We worked with the instructional leadership teams at each of the high schools to help them engage in a continuous improvement process. You'll see that while all 3 schools focused on attendance data, their approaches and goals varied. We learned a lot through this project, and these videos are our way of sharing the stories of Mergenthaler Vocational, Patterson, and Western high schools.
Baltimore is a pretty special place. The district serves about 85,000 students, about 85% of whom are African American, and also 85% receive free and reduced price meals. About 15% also receive special education. Recently, our demographic is changing in that we're seeing a lot more ELL students entering the district, especially refugees from other countries. So the demographic is highly impacted by poverty. Our neighborhoods are highly concentrated poverty, so it's a very unique and challenging place for researchers and educators to work.
Baltimore faces many challenges, and these challenges spill over into the lives of our students. We have economic challenges in the sense that there's tremendous economic inequality across the city. We have chronic poverty, and these are not just cases of short-term poverty, but we have long-term chronic poverty across multiple generations in the same family. And so it really is as though families just can't get on their feet. If you drive around and you look at many of our neighborhoods, you see lots of boarded up homes. And when you think about the fabric, the social structure and social networks of a community, if you have 10 homes on a block and only 2 of those homes are occupied and all the others are boarded up, who do you reach out to? How do you create a network when there's potentially instability within the family?
Improvement science is also known as the continuous improvement process. And those really are the key words: continuous improvement. So it's a way of implementing change, of studying change, and hopefully accelerating it because you are studying it and are sort of doing this rapid response to those changes and trying to refine the approach.
We were excited about it because rather than the traditional education improvement models of here's a new policy or here's a new intervention, let's try it out and see how kids do, it said rather than do these big changes, let's do little changes, little tiny changes, and dig in harder on the data. So improvement science gave us the opportunity to not think about attendance, but to think at your school, what sort of attendance problems do you see? What do you see? So we worked a lot with the schools, first on that culture, how data can be a helper. And then the second piece is changing the way the data was being reported or reanalyzing the data in a way that it was more meaningful for them.
MERVO is the largest school in the district. We can house up to 1,800 students, but we only house approximately 1,600 currently. We have a total of 22 trades, from cosmetology all the way to welding. We also have printing.
Our kids they're coming from every neighborhood in Baltimore City. They are coming from multiple different economic backgrounds, 2-parent, 1-parent households. So we have a very diverse student population. And we also have a very old building. So it's something that's kind of unique about our particular school. It's a large school, but it's very old. So we kind of are doing a lot with a little, so to say. One of the main issues we were hoping to address by using improvement science was violence amongst our 9th grade girls. We were hoping that we would see a decrease in the amount of physical confrontations and just overall just fights that are happening from last year to this year. Last year there were, and for our particular team, about I believe 10 to 15 fights. Another issue we wanted to use improvement science to address as a byproduct of the physical issues and physical fights was attendance. So if they're coming to school on a regular basis, not getting suspended for fights, or just coming to school because they don't have to worry about getting in fights, we were hoping that would be the end result. So it was attendance. And then as another byproduct of that would be grades and overall academic performance.
The goal that Team North established was to address fighting amongst 9th grade girls. This is an issue that's just, it's impacted a lot of 9th grade girls, not only last year, but in several years previous. It's not so much impacting girls in the 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, but there's something about the 9th grade year. So this team decided that they wanted to come up with some sort of a plan and start to collect data around ways of addressing this issue. So that's what we did. So we sat down, and the idea that they created was to start an advisory group. Advisory meets roughly 35 minutes every other week, so it's not a lot of time. But every teacher has a group of girls that comes and meets with them. So it's a really small group of girls that come together to address different issues that are taking place in the school, within their homes, within the community. So the idea behind this is that every girl within the 9th grade would have a teacher that serves as their mentor informally, and they have an opportunity to meet with not only their mentors, but roughly 10 or 15 other girls who are in their class twice a month to sit and discuss some issues.
The project is helping our school by minimizing it actually has minimized the amount of fights that we had in the freshman academy in its entirety. Team North, last year we had 20 fights in a semester. This year we've had 1 fight overall amongst two young ladies in our academy. So this is after implementing our wonderful mentor program, Operation Ascension, that we were able to do this, and we were able to isolate some of the issues that our young ladies were going through to attack why they were actually fighting. We have an awesome coach, Dr. Gibson. She texts us a lot about what's going on within the school, how our sessions go in Operation Ascension. Dr. Gibson, she monitors our attendance to see the correlation between attendance and fighting, and attendance and grades, and see how our actual program, Operation Ascension, is helping the students on their attendance and helping them as far as fighting, which is the main goal, and looking at the number of referrals that the students received, or our particular section that we use in the freshman academy.
We've identified a lot of challenges. I wish I could say there weren't so many. Several of the challenges really involve buy-in of both students and teachers. First and foremost, teachers have been really fantastic because you met with the 2 teachers who came up with the initial idea. They, along with a couple of administrators, came up with the idea. But the rest of the teachers on their team were basically just asked to participate in this, and based on their relationship with these other 2 teachers, Mr. Ellaby and Ms. Logan, they agreed to do it. But they didn't really know what they were getting themselves into, so they just did this trusting Ellaby and Logan that this was going to be something of benefit. So they didn't really have the buy-in outside of their relationship with those 2 teachers. Another challenge is the girls, the actual 9th grade girls who are participating in advisory. Some of them had different ideas about what they were getting themselves into. Some of them saw it as an opportunity to get out of their regular class and come. Some of them, they just had different expectations in terms of what it was going to be. All in all, the girls that I've spoken with and the teachers have talked about are having a good experience in advisory, but we should have done a better job, or if we did it in the future, we do a better job of front-loading them with information and helping them understand the significance and purpose of them coming together with an advisory. Additionally, a big piece of improvement science is understanding those systems that are in place, right, that help contribute towards a positive or not so great outcome. There are systems that are and are not in place that we would definitely need to address moving forward. For instance, the schedule right now that's used to accommodate advisory is something that the teachers on the team just came together to accommodate, right? So it's not a part of the school schedule. It's just the teachers within this group have agreed upon this. So if there is something going on in the school, that always trumps the time together that students have with the teachers for advisory. So that's also been an issue. Advisory is supposed to meet twice a month, but because of different school activities or testing, it's been bumped because it's not a part of the school schedule.
The challenges that remain are scheduling and making sure that some of our students feel comfortable enough with talking to their teachers. Some teachers were not able to get as much out of their students because the student was a little bit more reserved. So depending on which mentor group you went in, it was different. So the overall feel, if the overall feel in each group is unified, I think that that would be a great, great, great thing, but it's not. So that's one place that I think it will be a challenge.
Long-term planning, planning out what we wanted to see for the entire semester when we thought we were just going to do it for one semester. And it helped us when we were developing these activities for our students, for our peer mentoring program. And also having a team of teachers and other adults around you who were supportive in your efforts and they wanted to be a part of it. So those are two things that definitely, two change ideas that we implemented that definitely worked out well. A couple of lessons that we learned would be, one, you can never do enough planning. We should have planned the entire year and have much more long-term planning involved, and also making sure that everything was connected. All of our topics, all of our themes for our peer mentoring group, make sure they were connected, and so the students knew what to expect every other week, and they were ready to go, and we were building off of other ideas from the previous week and not just jumping from topic to topic.
I've learned a lot from the teachers. I've learned a lot from the ways that they have come together and have supported this initiative, even though some of them didn't necessarily have the initial buy-in. At the end of the day, it's been really powerful seeing teachers come together to address an issue. This is not something that administrators have told them to do. This is just something, as a group, they've come together and decided that they want to try to address through the use of advisories. And it's been really powerful seeing the ways that they work together and use data to help them address some of these issues.
Some of the things that we still need to learn is how to make sure that we are planning effectively on a long-term basis so that we can replicate this particular program for multiple groups of students. So for them to take it from the 9th grade teachers and also do it in the 10th grade, something that's consistent so our students see the support that they're getting from their teachers.
One thing I would like to share about my experience working with improvement science is that it definitely emphasized and it kind of showed me how important it is to have a well-oiled, I guess you could say, machine or a system in place, and making sure that every part of that system is working towards yielding the results that you want to see. And you need to plan out everything. You need to make sure that you have your data points so that you can gauge, or whatever you want to see that. It could be data, it could be anything else, so you can make sure that your results are what you want, or you want to see the results in general. And then from that point, you can go back and make tweaks to the system. And I believe that was a great thing that improvement science showed me, and it was one of the better parts of the experience, that really understanding how systems and processes really work hand in hand to kind of get where you want to be and yield the results that you want.
Patterson High School is one of the largest traditional comprehensive high schools in Baltimore. In urban education, they've cut schools down so that there are often more than one school within a campus. So we're one of the last remaining schools that's completely within its own building, and it's a larger school. There are approximately 1,100 students, and it happens to be the most diverse school in Baltimore. We have over 30 different cultures and 27 different languages spoken at the school. We're also a CTE school, which is a career technology education school. So students that go to Patterson High School get a industry certification alongside their diploma so that they can get a job in the workforce once they're finished.
One of the ways that we're using improvement science is to help them first think about their problems differently, perhaps in ways that they haven't already. I think often schools are caught in this data for accountability practice. And so they're accountable for things like the number of kids failing courses or the number of kids not showing up for school, chronic absenteeism. And underneath that, there's data for improvement, which is different than data for accountability. It's often the same data, but it requires formatting the data differently, looking at it differently, and asking different questions of it. So a good example in our work currently is that the school initially was concerned about course failure in algebra and English. And through conversations with the principal, it became apparent that underneath course failure was kids not showing up for school. And so then we began to address absenteeism. And what the principal was working with initially were aggregate counts of days missed. And that's helpful to identify kids with patterns of chronic absenteeism, but it's not really helpful for improving. So we worked with him to identify, can we get daily counts of kids across courses? And that proved to be a difficult question to address at first. So we worked with him to pull that data from the system and to get it into a format that was usable by him.
Our attendance issues fall into three major categories. The first being chronically absent. When you say chronic absence, that specifically means that that student is on track to be absent more than 20 days within a school year. So these are kids that are actually missing entire days of school. So that's our first issue. Our second issue is one that's called class cutting. It really is a result from another issue that we like to call hall walking. They somehow go missing in between their class periods, and so they end up missing class, and that comes along with various reasons. The last major issue is that because we have such a diverse population, a lot of our ESL students, that's English as a second language, they come with a variety of different responsibilities to their jobs, their homes, and everything else.
There are many challenges that remain in doing this improvement science project. I think one is recognizing that schools are complex organizations, that people are busy, they have many tasks that they must perform on a daily basis. And just like any other kind of project that comes into a school, there's this sometimes slow process of getting buy-in from all the stakeholders, not just the principal, not just the administrative staff, but also the teachers and hopefully the students as well. And so a challenge is sustaining the work and finding early wins that people can see. They can see changes happening, and that begins to build this buy-in to the program that says, oh, this is not just something else that's coming in that I'm required to do. It's something that is actually helping me do my job better.
One of the things that worked well is that they helped us develop a system by which we can look for patterns within a student's attendance. So for example, student A has a 78% attendance rate, which is not phenomenal, but not that poor. However, during one class, they noted that attendance falls to 35%. And that class happens to be the third class, so it's not the first class or the last class. So through that process, it helped us to go deeper and figure out what is going on here. We were able to look at the student's schedule, sit down with the student, and figure out that the issue is that the student is really struggling in his English class, so he doesn't want to go to class. So he finds excuses not to go, hides. So that's one of the small wins that we were able to get with the help of Burke.
So in terms of lessons learned from this project, I think it's the early identification of problem and working quickly to get to root causes potentially of that problem. So for example, we started at a level of course failure, and that's a big problem. That's a hard problem. And that we quickly moved towards September attendance because we know the relationship between chronic absenteeism and course failure. Moving quickly to a manageable problem is a way to make this work, to get people to buy in, to see early success. So working with the school to identify kids at risk of chronic absenteeism early in September was the first step. And then the next step was to continually push and ask questions and to dig deeper. So for us, it was, well, why are these kids absent? Why are they showing, absences? And then asking, the daily attendance. So when we started looking at daily attendance and actually looking at it by class every single day, we began to identify patterns. And so for a principal who doesn't normally see the data in that form, even though it's the base data, really was enlightening, I think, for the principal and the other staff. Really, it's this continual asking tough questions, bringing data at the appropriate level is really what improvement science needs to get people to deeply engage with the process. So I think in my experience, the thing that kind of surprised me was improvement science sounds very simple, right? You observe, you use data to understand a problem, you think about the system that creates the problem, and then you propose ideas and you implement them and see what happens. In practice, that's very hard to do. That's very hard to do in a consistent, ongoing manner. So I think part of our learning in this process is how do we go into schools that are operating, they have all the concerns of just the daily work, and how do we bring these ideas and present them in ways that practitioners who have to worry about the next class can also engage with this sustained, ongoing process of thinking about improvement. And that's where the value is, I think, is once we learn, we're learning better how to do that, and people get it pretty quickly. But it's that initial difficulty, that entry into a school that's already operating, it has all these other things it's doing, and bringing these ideas to fruition.
Western High School is the oldest all-girl public school in the nation. We were founded November 1st, 1844. We roughly have about 1,100 girls from Baltimore City and the surrounding counties. We also offer rigorous academic programs such as Teacher Academy, Project Lead the Way, Biomedical Sciences, IT, Networking Academy, and we're also a college prep school.
At the heart of implementing continuous improvement at Western is something called the Know Better, Do Better program. And Know Better, Do Better is designed, it's an intervention. It was initially designed as a 6-week program which would provide individual and small group coaching to girls who had been identified as having attendance challenges.
We develop a coaching program for our students, Know Better, Do Better, which is the Continuous Improvement Project. This project will help our students identify barriers to their attendance issues, and we will also be able to help them address their challenges.
Primarily, I'm helping them look at existing data in different ways. So, for example, the district uses monthly attendance as a measure for understanding attendance patterns. And what we were able to do is, by looking at daily attendance, begin to look at patterns that occur across the day.
We usually look at data, at attendance data as a monthly thing instead of looking at it individually, daily attendance. So by monitoring each student's daily attendance, we will be able to closely see what is going on. What are some of the patterns? Like, we realized that some of our girls, they were coming to school, but they were skipping classes. So they would go to lunch that are not their lunch periods.
So students make decisions about attendance every day and essentially every hour. And what we were able to see by looking at daily attendance is that students were coming to school in some cases, and then they were skipping classes once they were there. So by using continuous improvement, we were able to peel back the layers and look at the data at a much smaller scope.
The Know Better, Do Better project is a very good program for our ninth grade girls that we initially started as a 6-week program. However, through working with our ninth grade girls, we found that, number one, after the initial 6 weeks, first 6 weeks, some of them really depended on the Know Better, Do Better program and kind of stopped coming to school once we ended it after the first 6 weeks. So the Burke group helped us to realize that this was a program that we needed to keep at our school on a long-term basis. So working with our girls, weekly, we're doing individual one-on-one sessions, we do small group sessions, we bring all the girls together, we bring the parents in. So this program has helped the students, parents, teachers, staff to be knowledgeable about the Maryland state attendance laws, for us to get to know the kids, to kind of identify their barriers, things that are keeping them from coming to school, identifying parents' barriers, helping them with barriers with their teachers and staff and themselves. They're able to, take a good look at themselves and identify, what's going on with them to kind of, bring it to reality that there is a problem, an attendance issue that must be addressed, and we as staff are, here to help them and guide them and coach them through their challenges.
Continuous improvement is helping Western in many ways. We still have a ways to go. But I think that one thing in the very beginning, the team went in and they asked students what information they knew about attendance, what were the guidelines, what were the rules. And what they discovered is that many students were unfamiliar with things that the staff assumed that students knew. And this was consistent also when they posed the same question to parents. So in the first step, I think uncovering and discovering the information that was assumed that students and families knew that they didn't was a big step, because you can't hold people responsible for things that they don't necessarily understand. The second important thing is that the process of helping the students identify their own individual barriers to getting to school, whether it's transportation or staying up too late or not having their alarm set correctly, helping students identify their own barriers and then develop an action plan to get them to school on time every day is a big step. And working with the students to develop the strategy is helpful, because it's coming from the student's perspective versus something that's just being given to them. I think the other way that continuous improvement is helping the school is that the school has data. They had the daily data, they had access to it, but because the district looks at monthly data, the school was essentially ignoring the daily data. And in reality, the daily data really unfolded another story for us. What we realized was that I think we underestimated how complex missing school can be, and many students in Baltimore schools face a lot of challenges. And ultimately, we saw that many of the behaviors were deeply entrenched in terms of their own individual history and family history, and those patterns are really hard to change, but at least having those problems unfold for us, I think, was very important and a very important outcome of continuous improvement. I think also that continuous improvement helped us to see what possible changes needed to be made in terms of practice or policy or even new technology. So using the swipe cards that students use regularly, they were easy things to potentially change. And I think that creating the possibility of figuring out where technology might be changed, which is very different from the kind of human behavior aspect of attendance.
We are now implementing this Know Better, Do Better program throughout the entire school for all grades. So some of the challenges that remain are actually talking to the girls and getting them to, open up and admit to us what may be, some of the barriers, the challenges that they are experiencing, family issues that they may be having, social issues that they may be having. So those are some things that, still remain as challenges.
Perhaps the biggest challenge of looking at attendance is that the root cause is generally behavioral. What the beginning work in the Know Better, Do Better program revealed to us was that the two leading causes for students being absent for school or being late were transportation challenges and students staying up too late on their cell phones and not necessarily going to bed when they should have, not getting enough sleep. And so those were two behavioral things that were fairly easy to develop solutions for. Trying to figure out what are the changes in practice and policy that we can begin to institutionalize. So, for example, there was a student who wasn't coming to school or was late because she was having vision problems. And so what can the process be for making sure that the student gets eyeglasses, gets a vision exam, and how can we institutionalize that so that the next time this happens, we have a fairly easy pathway to follow for a solution?
I would suggest just making sure that one-on-one and implementing the continuous improvement program, on a long-term basis, not just, a short time, because it really works for our girls. And then looking at the data outside of the box, we would normally just maybe look at monthly data or school-wide data or just data within each class.
The process takes time, and you really have to honor that you can't jump in despite the sense of urgency that might be created by the persistence of a problem. The second thing is that there's a need to take things in small steps. The third thing I would say is that we need to not necessarily anticipate failure, but not to become too discouraged by failure. Because what we saw with the Know Better, Do Better program is that it seemed to work for the first 6 weeks. And then at the end of the program, some of the girls stopped coming to school. And so we became very discouraged. And I think some people were quick to say, well, it didn't work. But it did work because while it was in place, we saw a change in behavior. And I think the last thing is to see continuous improvement as a strategy for creating possibility. So for example, while the district really sees the monthly attendance as key, there are other ways to look at the issue of attendance. And so we were able to create, and it took some work, but to create the possibility of learning and exploration by looking at the daily attendance. And once we looked at the daily attendance and then saw what the hourly attendance looked like, we were able to learn some important kernels of truth.
The project is helping our school in ways such as bringing forth awareness. As I mentioned, parents and students were unaware of the attendance policy, so we were able to create strategies and newsletters and phone calls, just kind of trying to promote the attendance policy and making these families aware of what the policy is. Also, we learned that these students have different family dynamics, different patterns that they have developed over the years. And we learned that we cannot change these young ladies' patterns within 6 weeks or even months. And it's going to take longer for us to continue to coach them through their different strategies in order to see more improvement.
Our Know Better, Do Better is the perfect name for our group, because now that our girls know better, they are really trying to do better to make sure that they are successful.
We tend to think, oh, if we can just get them in school, but it's not quite that simple. And many of the students face some pretty difficult challenges in terms of getting to school, and whether it's transportation and safety concerns, or whether the issue is challenges that students face because of family circumstances and having, in some cases, to provide childcare for younger siblings. And I think these are the challenges of working with a population, a high poverty population.